This is my free hit team for FPL Gameweek 13. Hello and welcome to FPL Mate. My name is Dan. Today I have built a free hit team because I am like 90% going to activate the chip this week. So I've made a team for myself for you guys to have a look at if you would like to. This is just the first draft, so there will be another version later on in the week when we gather more information. So feel free to subscribe if you want to stick around to see what the final draft looks like. But this is what we're working with right now, and maybe this can convince you guys to free hit if you like the look of this team. Of course, we are going to go through some of the reasons why you might want to free hit later on in the video, but I think we want to get straight stuck in and have a look at some of these players. So let's start off in goal, and we have gone for Martinez of Aston Villa fame. Now, Wolves have only scored 7 goals in the league so far. That's 4 goals worse than the second worst team, Leeds. And Aston Villa defensive asset is pretty much a no-brainer this week. I think they are an improving defense. They have conceded an average of around 1 XG per game over the past 6 or 7 game weeks, so that puts them around 3rd or 4th in the Premier League using this metric during this period. Obviously, they have kept clean sheets against Bournemouth and Man City in recent weeks, but they also kept 3 out of 4 clean sheets in their Europa League games so far as well. So in terms of clean sheet potential, they are actually maybe a bit underrated generally. So why Martinez? Well, in my opinion, the best way into the Aston Villa defence is the goalkeeper. The defenders are allergic to defensive contributions over at Villa. So I think it does make sense to go for a goalkeeper here and maybe save some of those defender slots for other teams, basically. So this is actually going to be my only Aston Villa player, by the way, because I don't really trust the attackers. They do all seem to be out of form, rotation risk, or maybe both. None of them have particularly good data or look particularly threatening when you watch them match. However, Rodgers did score twice in game week 12, and I know a lot of people will be tempted there. He scored 1 goal from a fairly tight angle. He scored a free kick that I don't think he actually would have taken if other players were on the pitch. Having watched that free kick goal, I'm still not entirely sure how it went in, but maybe I need to watch that one again. Maybe that's just me being a bit cynical, but typically we see Rodgers maybe only take 1 shot per game, maybe make 1 key pass per game. So you kind of have to hope these rare opportunities are the ones that find the back of the net. So I do think Rodgers is a fine free hit pick. If I had to pick one attacker from Villa, it would be him, but 1 good game week score isn't quite enough to 100% convince me, and as such, I will be leaving him out of this draft. But for the record, I can definitely see myself bottling that one when I see how popular he becomes over the next few days. I know that's going to happen, so I just wanted to put that one in now and let you know, guys, that there is no Rodgers in this team currently. But let's move on to defense anyway. We've got Van den Berg. Now, he's actually one of the first players that I put in this free hit team. Burnley have the worst XG in the league this season. They also take the fewest shots, so you're unlikely to get save points. So a defender from Brentford, I think, makes sense. Burnley also concede the 2nd most headed chances from set pieces in the league, and Van den Berg is a bona fide target man, basically. So he has the 4th most XG of any defender in the league so far this season. He's nailed for minutes, and he also sits 10th in the table for defensive contributions among defenders. And at 4.5 million, it just seems like a super obvious pick. Like, there is so much going in his favour for this game week, and he's a real hidden gem. Not really too many people are looking at him, talking about him, but he really ticks a lot of the boxes when we're looking for those FPL assets. So let's move on to the next defender. It is going to be Virgil, and I am a little on the fence with this one. Liverpool are poor defensively. I do wonder if maybe dropping Konate might improve that one, but West Ham are capable of a goal too. We've seen that in recent weeks. So whilst I'm not expecting clean sheets, it's far from guaranteed, I do think Virgil offers us a few other things. So first of all, consistent defensive contribution points and 90 minutes every game means he basically starts every game week on 4 points. He's the primary aerial threat against the team who are the weakest against aerial threats. And a clean sheet is still possible. Like, I don't want to say it's likely, but it is still possible. So I think when you combine that in with the other factors, probably worth sticking him in the free hit team. And the final defender is going to be O'Reilly. And now, against the weak attack of Leeds, I think a Man City defender is another pretty obvious inclusion. I need to keep an eye on midweek minutes to try and predict who will play, but if all goes well, O'Reilly looks like the best pick. So while City are generally poor for defensive contributions, O'Reilly offers genuine attacking threat. He creates chances from that left back position. He takes shots. He's a big guy who can be a target man from those set pieces. And this is backed up by data as well. If you look at the per 90 numbers, he's one of the very top players for expected goal involvements among defenders with around 0.22, meaning we do expect him to be involved in a goal once every 4 or 5 games, maybe. So let's hope it's this game week. Again, maybe he is a player who is rotation risk in the long term, but if we can secure his minutes for this game week in isolation, I think it's a really nice pick. I would be a little bit worried about owning him longer term, but I think generally he's just a good pick right now. So let's move into the midfield. We've got Mo Salah. Liverpool players are going to be controversial right now. A 3-0 home loss against Nottingham Forest doesn't look good on paper, but hear me out. They actually look good for the first 30 minutes of the game, but the chances were maybe just falling to the wrong players. They just completely fell apart after they conceded that first goal. I think Salah looked good. He was creative. He took a few shots at 0.5 XGI, so expected goal involvements in that game against Forest, which is pretty much standard for him at the moment. He is fairly involved in the attack at the moment and putting up some pretty decent numbers, very decent numbers actually. Maybe not very decent for his price tag, but generally pretty decent numbers. I'm happy with them. And I think we do need to remember that West Ham are not Forest. Like, Forest have genuinely improved defensively under Sean Dyche. West Ham under Nuno, nothing has changed. I mean, they conceded twice to Burnley last game week, didn't they? So whatever you think about Liverpool, do you really think they're worse than Burnley? I mean, no offense to Burnley, but come on now. So for that reason, we are going to be doubling up with Cody Gakpo. And this is probably the player I'm most likely to bottle to maybe Rodgers. When you guys, tell me how much of an idiot I am in the comments, no doubt. But Salah and Gakpo, I actually thought played okay in the game against Forest. Gakpo, 90 minutes with Wirtz injured. And if Wirtz is still injured, a minute secure Gakpo is definitely a good thing. His underlying numbers this season have actually been better than Salah's. He scored 4 and made 3 assists this season in all competitions, despite Liverpool playing a lot of tough fixtures. And I think the reason he's not as popular in FPL is because of that minutes risk. But if Wirtz is going to be out again, I see no problem with going for him as a one-week punt. And honestly, even if Wirtz is back, with Szoboszlai playing at right back, Isak bang out of form, maybe Gakpo's minutes potential is actually pretty good right now. I also do like Szoboszlai, by the way, for this position, if you're looking to maybe trim the budget a little bit, because I appreciate this team is quite expensive. It works for my budget, but it might not work for yours. Let's go to the next pick now. It's not another Liverpool player. Don't worry about that. It is Phil Foden. Now, it is, I think, difficult to pick out a second attacker from Man City right now, but against Leeds, who, whilst I don't think they're an awful defence, I do think they are capable of capitulating once they do concede. I think a second Man City attacker could be a good idea. I mean, someone has to assist Haaland, right? Now, looking through the data, Foden and maybe Doku stand out. Cherki has to be considered too now that he's available. I've gone for Foden in this team as, without much information, I think his minutes potential is the best. He's a regular starter right now and doesn't really seem to get those early subs either. He looked good against Newcastle, unlucky not to score, maybe unlucky not to get a penalty as well, win a penalty. So yeah, he was picking up some really, really dangerous positions, and we kind of see that from him every game at the moment. And right now, I think he looks like the biggest threat, attacking threat at least, from Man City outside of Haaland. Is he a player I would want to risk in my team week in, week out? Probably not, but that is the benefit of the free hit. And I think midweek minutes will give us a better idea on the best City attackers. And there's a chance of a lineup leak as well, with City being one of the teams playing directly after the game week 13 deadline. So let's see, is it going to be Foden? Is it going to be Cherki, Doku, someone else like that? We'll have to wait and see. But moving on, the final midfielder is going to be Dango. Dango, what are you doing in my FPL team? Well, if we do want to target Burnley in a home fixture, this is not such a bad way to go about it. Kevin Schade at 7 million is also an option, but if we're looking for a budget-friendly guy, Dango's minutes have improved and he is delivering regularly. A goal and 3 assists in the past 4 game weeks against some tough oppositions, actually. You do have to wonder if he can produce even more in a more favourable game. So be aware, he does have some rotation risk and will regularly get an early sub. Again, in the long term, I would say he's a risky pick, but for a one-week punt, I actually think he looks pretty nice. let's go to the forwards, guys. Erling Haaland. Do we need to talk about this one? Really, the best player in the entirety of FPL against Leeds United at home. No brainer, right? I'm not going to waste your time on this one. Haaland is a game week 13 free hit. Essential. Let's move on to Igor Thiago, Mr. Penalty Merchant himself. And by the way, did you know that Brentford have already received 6 penalties so far this season? That is absolutely crazy. That's actually double the second most as well. So why are they getting so many penalties? Maybe something to do with their dribbly, pacey wingers getting fouled a lot. But anyway, Thiago has kind of come out of nowhere to become that, you know, one of the top FPL assets, really. I guess 4 penalty goals does help that, but he has also scored a further 5 Premier League goals from open play. So he's clinical, in hot form, data-backed, scoring penalties, and he's about to play the best fixture of his season. Thiago isn't just a must-have on the free hit, but arguably, he's a reason to free hit. If you don't have Thiago in your regular squad, you know, he's going to be a player you are really fearful of not owning. And that brings us to our final player in the starting 11, at least, and it's going to be Jean-Philippe Mateta. Now, that might surprise you. I know he is in a lot of our non-free hit teams, and I know people will be free hitting specifically to take players out of the Palace versus United fixture. But in the case of Palace attackers, kind of, you have to ask why. We know Mateta is one of the very best data picks in the game. We also know that Man United are really struggling defensively still. In particular, United do concede a lot of high-quality chances in those central areas close to goal. So basically, exactly where Mateta plays. So, you know, in a way, I think it's always really nice to include a penalty taker, of course. But I do think a lot of free hitters will make the mistake of kind of removing Mateta because, you know, you have unlimited transfers on your free hit. You can have anyone you like. Let's just go crazy. Let's change our whole team. But actually, I think Mateta could be one of those guys who actually punishes a lot of the free hitters who remove him. So whilst I don't think he's an essential pick by any stretch, he certainly makes my first draft, and I'll be pretty happy to include him in a Game Week 13 team, regardless of whether you're free hitting or not. I quite like this one, actually. I think he could do quite well. Let's go on to the bench, guys. We've got Dubravka, just a nice cheap 4 million backup goalkeeper in case we have a disaster in the Martinez situation. The rest of the bench is pretty weak, and that is primarily for budget reasons for me personally. We've got Alderete here in my squad. You could also put Mukiele here, but Alderete slightly cheaper here if you are worried about price changes. So Thiago, for example, is due to go up 0.1 million tonight. So it is going to get very tight for budget for me personally. Might even have to make more changes. But Alderete, you know, as a backup against Bournemouth, it's not too bad. You know, you could do a lot worse here. We've got Esteve, 3.9 million. Again, you know, you're hoping he doesn't play, but, you know, if he needs to. And we've got Devaney there, 4.3 million, cheapest midfielder in the game. And he will get some minutes again in an absolute disaster. But if you're on a free hit, really, you shouldn't be picking any players who you think have a chance of getting 0 minutes. So you're not going to pick any injured players or kind of suspended players or anything like that. You can have whoever you want in your free hit team. So you shouldn't really need your bench, but I still think it is a good idea to have players who will at least play in the first couple of slots on your bench. But primarily, my focus is to put as much money as physically possible into the starting 11 because I'm not expecting to be using my bench players at all. But look, you never know. But yeah, it's not like Semenyo last week where you're not sure if he's going to play or not, because, you know, you're not going to pick players like Semenyo this week. You're not going to pick players who are kind of on the edge. So you're probably not going to need that bench, or at least not as much as usual anyway. So that is what the team is looking like. Going on to captains, it is going to be Erling Haaland captain with Salah vice captain. I think Haaland is so obvious as a captain against Leeds at home. Knowing how good Haaland is, this is a much better fixture than Newcastle away last game week. And if you have your triple captainship and you're not free hitting, this is actually an amazing triple captain week as well. Arguably the best triple captain week available between now and game week 19. So, you know, that is one thing to consider if you are free hitting. But speaking of, guys, I do want to go through some of the reasons to free hit. But before I do, if you wouldn't mind dropping a like on the video, it would massively be appreciated. It really does help out the channel so much. And yeah, I know a lot of people have not been getting my videos on their home pages on YouTube recently. Dropping a like really does help out to kind of get their videos back in motion. So appreciate all of you guys who do drop the likes. It genuinely really does help. But reasons to free hit in game week 13. So first of all, I guess we're not expecting any double or blank game weeks in the first half of the season from now on. Like, there's not really any cup clashes or anything like that. The only reason we'll really get any double or blank game weeks is if there are games cancelled for like weather reasons or something like that, or a monarch dying or something like that. So that is the kind of reason we might see a blank game week. It's kind of, even then, it's unlikely we get a double game week scheduled in December. So, you know, we might, under very rare circumstances, we might get a blank game week, but pretty unlikely to get a double game week, I guess. But outside of that, what are the big reasons? So I think the big reason is to remove Chelsea versus Arsenal players. So if we're not planning on doubles and blanks, we're just looking at fixtures and the quality of fixtures. Chelsea players against Arsenal are bad. If you have a lot of them, you want to remove them. Arsenal players against Chelsea arguably are bad as well. I guess I wouldn't mind an attacker, but the defensive assets, Chelsea are very good at attack. Chelsea are at home. I wouldn't really be backing Arsenal defenders in this particular week. One of the few weeks where I wouldn't be backing Arsenal defenders. You also might want to remove Crystal Palace and Man United players. So Man United's attackers or defenders are going to be, you know, not ideal against a strong Crystal Palace team that keeps clean sheets and scores goals. So Cunha and Burmo, Bruno, whoever you've got, probably not ideal for this Crystal Palace game. Crystal Palace attackers, maybe you could keep them, but even Crystal Palace defenders, you're not going to back them against Man United. Other reasons, you might want to include Brentford players versus Burnley. A lot of people don't have any Brentford players at all to play against Burnley. Some of you guys might just have Thiago. Other games here, we've got like Man City versus Leeds. So obviously everyone has Haaland at this point, pretty much. But a lot of people don't have any other Man City players, so this might be an opportunity to take some Man City players to play against Leeds for this one game week only, without having to hold them long term and dealing with the Pep Roulette rotation risk week on week on week. You maybe could also think, you know, I want some Liverpool players against West Ham, but that's a little bit more debatable. Certainly Brentford and Man City players are going to be really important. Maybe Aston Villa players as well against Wolves, who you might not have in your normal team, but you might want to have them in a free hit team. In general, there's a lot of 1 week punt players that could do really well that you wouldn't necessarily want long term. So we spoke about Foden. We've spoken about some other rotation risk players like Dango Ouattara, maybe O'Reilly as well. And many, many more like that as well. Maybe even Gakpo. Longer term, you might not want him, but for this week, looks really good. A lot of players also have bad fixtures after this week. So Brentford, for example, really nice fixture against Burnley. And then after Burnley, you know, we've got Arsenal, we've got Spurs. Maybe not fixtures you would want to have your Brentford players in. So nice to have for 1 week, these Brentford players, but you wouldn't necessarily want them next week, is what I'm kind of saying there. And of course, Chelsea and Man United players, they have good fixtures after this week. So they might be in your regular team. You don't want to remove them permanently, but you wouldn't necessarily want them for game week 13. Same with Crystal Palace defenders, for example. You like them in general, but you might not necessarily want them for game week 13 in isolation. So final comment, I guess if you don't have your triple captain chip, I think that is more motivation to use a free hit this week. Because I think if you do have a triple captain chip and you're not using it on Haaland this week, that is genuinely a reason to not free hit. Because that's probably the biggest weakness of the free hit in game week 13, is that you don't get to triple captain Haaland in game week 13. But you could also triple captain Haaland in game week 17, which is going to be at home against West Ham. So that's not too bad either. If you happen to prefer the game against West Ham than the game at home against Leeds, then, you know, triple captain then instead, it's not an issue. But it is something worth noting. Those who don't free hit this week will most likely be triple captaining if they still have their triple captain chip, and they could do quite well out of that. And you never know, the triple captain could actually be a better idea than the free hit. Of course, we don't know yet how many goals Haaland is going to score, but if he scores 3 or 4 goals, you might be wishing you held on to your free hit and you used your triple captain chip instead. But we don't see Haaland score 3 or 4 goals that often, right, guys? Anyway, guys, that is going to be the team. Hope you like the look of it. Let me know what you think about this team. Does it look good? Does it look strong? Is there any players I have missed out other than Morgan Rogers? I know you guys are already going to say his name in this team. Do drop a like, do subscribe, and make sure you follow along for plenty more Game Week 13 content throughout the week. But cheers for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.